Morning, everyone. Welcome to Radical Transparency, a Pfizer Masterclass in Developing Earned Trust. We'd like to thank Industry Dive for sponsoring the session as part of the Content Innovation Track. Make sure to visit them in booth 621 at the Expo Hall. Today we'll hear from Ellen Gerstein, Senior Director of Digital Communications for Pfizer, joined by Robin Ray, VP of Marketing for Industry Dive. As a reminder, please remember to rate the speakers after the session. You can find speaker evaluations in the mobile app on the home page under the speaker evaluation form on the home page. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Ellen Gerstein and Robin Ray.
Thank you. Welcome everyone to our Marketing Masterclass. As she said, I'm Robin Ray, VP of Marketing at Industry Dive. We are a leading business journalism company. We serve millions of decision makers across more than 20 industries. We serve them through 27 different daily publications with daily insights and analysis. You may have heard a few of them: Marketing Dive, Social Media Today, Biopharma Dive, Retail Dive, and others. We also have a global content studio called Studio ID, where we help brands tell their stories with a journalistic mindset. And Studio ID has been working with Pfizer for over 4 years now. Got the Pfizer team here, really helping them perfect their content strategy and breaking down complex issues, very common in science, into digestible, audience-first stories that build trust with their followers. And I think that's really crucial right now with the increasing consumer skepticism, misinformation, things like that. So really excited to talk with you today, Ellen, and thank you for joining us on stage.
Thank you, Robin.
Great.
Oh, my mic works. Exciting. Thank you. Thank you, Tech.
She's here.
I'm here.
I guess maybe start off a little bit telling us what your role is at Pfizer and how it relates to content marketing.
Sure. At Pfizer, I'm the head of digital communications, which means I oversee our Pfizer.com website as well as our social media channels. I also was involved in Pfizer's employee advocacy efforts and built our first platform to allow employees to share stories of our work. That's important because that started in March of 2020. So you're going to hear that date a lot.
I think we all remember that very well.
Yes, some more than others.
Wonderful. Well, we're here to talk about audience trust today, and I think that audience trust is really at the core of any business's relationship with their customer. And in order to build audience trust, you really need to have a deep understanding of your audience. So I'd love to hear about Pfizer's approach to audience research and kind of helping to build out your content program from there.
Sure. And I'm grateful to be here today, and I want to thank you, Robin, and everyone at Industry Dive for having me here to tell the story, and thank you for showing up today. I'm really excited to be here. Taking us a little bit forward to March of 2021, we were 1 year into the pandemic. We were seeing people get vaccinated. We had a lot of websites under our purview, and we had consolidated some of them. If you remember, Get Old, Get Healthy, Stay Healthy, and Get Science. Somebody's actually nodding. Yes. Okay, she's in Industry Dive, so she would remember that. They're hard to remember because they were skewing our audience in different ways that didn't necessarily make sense with the new company that we had become. So we combined them into one site called Breakthroughs. So we had breakthroughs.com and Pfizer.com. And what we tried to say was that Breakthroughs was our science-focused site, and Pfizer.com was kind of everything else. We realized very quickly that that was not going to be a sustainable strategy. We were trying to do stories for two different sites. We were struggling to really understand who our audience was. So we worked with Industry Dive on a series of research projects to understand personas. I come from marketing, and I think about people. I don't think about things. So when it comes to who am I writing for, I think about a person. I think about Sally Scientist, who is a bench scientist in Cambridge. I think about Joe Consumer, who is thinking about getting his parents vaccinated, because at that point they were of the age to get vaccinated. I think about all the parents who are looking at information for their kids. I don't think in terms of, blobs. So we worked with Industry Dive on a series of audience interviews, stakeholder interviews audience research, stakeholder interviews, and more to create these personas. And what we realized was, yes, we had scientists who were coming to our site, but the core of our audience was what I like to call science curious. So they were far more interested in understanding what was going on behind the scenes than the average person, but they weren't all PhDs. So we really had to skew Pfizer.com content to the sci curious. Definitely more than you'd get at a regular site, but people were interested in learning more about who did the work at Pfizer, understanding how we got the vaccine done in 9 months.
Right.
There's books on that you can read, by the way. And the like. It really changed the way we worked because we were able to say with these 5 personas, here is who you're writing to, and here's who you're thinking of as an audience. And it was a real game changer for us.
Yeah, and we talked about before that an important piece of that is revisiting your personas as the world around them changes, as was happening during the pandemic. I know that was a piece of it too, of kind of keeping dynamic understanding of your audience.
Definitely. I spend a lot of time in social media, probably too much for my health. I read the comments. I recommend it for some things, but not for other things. But we could also see things changing. In 2020, the Axios Harris poll had us, I think, in the low hundreds. In 2021, we moved up to number 7. So we realized that people were starting to trust us more. They were looking at us, as we hoped, as a trusted source of information, which was really surprising.
Yeah.
Very surprising. At the beginning, we were like, why would you come to Pfizer over the CDC? Why would you come here over, all these other sites? And the truth was people were going to every site. And if you're a knowledge junkie, you are looking for information anywhere you can find it. This was an early time of people being very nervous, very anxious. So they were looking for the best information they could find. And when we announced that we were in the vaccine game, that changed everything. And so much more traffic was being directed to us.
Absolutely. And, I think health has become such a global issue because of the pandemic, and people are curious about other diseases as well. So how do you handle hot button topics, sensitive issues, while maintaining audience trust?
That's a great question. I always like to say, and I can break it down to, there's what people want to say internally, but for me, it's about what our audience wants to hear. And there's a message that usually gets framed in a narrative, and here we're going to go out with it. I'm like, okay, nobody's going to understand that. Nobody's going to buy that. Nobody's going to really relate to that. We need to modify it so that people can understand it. And that's been a huge thing that happened with the pandemic. We basically got a seat at the table.
Yeah.
Before we were, who can relate to this? We were that cute little team that did the tweets and, Are you 22? Do you have interns working for you? I mean, we've heard it all, but we're a team of various ages and we are social media professionals. We are content pros. And it was important for us to have a voice in the conversation to let them know, here's what we're seeing from our audience. And they don't really care about that. They want to understand what's going on with manufacturing the vaccine. Should they take their husband to get chemotherapy during the pandemic? Is that a risk for him? I mean, oncology was all over that topic with us, which was great. So we were able to answer a lot of those questions. And just having a seat at the table really made a difference for us.
Absolutely. In our newsroom, when we talk about content strategy, it's just as important for us to determine what we're not going to talk about. Which topics not to cover. So I'm curious about how your team approaches, which topics to, have a seat at the table about and to put out content for.
It is very much based on the metrics. And as I like to say, I use a hand gesture, like, are we talking to us or are we talking to our audience? And we always want to be talking to our audience. Yeah. And I think this gesture came because I gave people the hand too much, no, stop it. We get pushback sometimes when we want to talk about things that Pfizer is not involved in. And very early in the pandemic, January 2020, I wanted to start putting content out about the novel coronavirus and everything that was going on. And I got a big hand going, no, you can't, because we haven't announced that we're in the game yet. We don't know that we're going to be in the game. We don't know what's happening. Right. I understood that. I think that made sense at the time because the markets would be affected, people would be affected, so that was something. But when it comes to other topics that we may not have a treatment in every area of oncology, should we still talk about it? Yes, because those topics are what our followers are asking for.
Right.
So that becomes a little bit of a back and forth. And right now, even this morning, I was looking at my emails from teams going, well, we don't have a treatment for that. Why are we talking about that? Because this is what our audience is coming to us for. And we want to make sure we have that content to serve their needs.
Audience first.
Audience
Absolutely.
first, always.
Always. Well, with the fact that you're touching time-sensitive topics and producing the volume of content that you do put out within a large organization like Pfizer, how do you cut through red tape to be able to pull it off?
Red tape. I'd also like to add that I went to the Cleveland Clinic keynote yesterday. Hey, 80 people, I have 10% of that. And let me tell you, I took every note to go back, not to say like I need 80 people, because that would be really nice, but to say this is what you can expect when you have 8 people, and this is what we're here to deliver. And the question was again, because now I'm thinking about I want more people.
Cutting through red tape.
Cutting through red tape.
Fast
Okay.
tracking approval.
Does anybody outside of you, because I know you do, well, maybe not, work in a regulated industry? Okay.
Decent amount.
Anybody who's not worked in a regulated industry, you probably write an article or a social post, and you just put it on up out there and see how it does, right? No, that's not how this works. There's lawyers, there's regulatory people, there are medical professionals who get involved to a level that's just kind of amazing. And I'm going to credit our CEO, Albert Bourla, maybe you've heard of him, for pushing the word simplicity and really going after everybody on the teams following simplicity. That when you're in a situation and you're sitting here, real story, you're in a meeting and you start counting the amount of people and you start saying, well, they probably make this per year. Now, if I divided it into the 2 hours of this meeting, we've just spent what? And that's when you have to say, nope, I'm cutting it off here. And it means having a little bit of courage to stand up to people, but you got to do it, because if you're working on a project and it's taking 6 months, the tone of the conversation, the way your followers feel can change drastically. And that has happened again and again, where I've looked at content and said, wow, that would have been great if we put it out a year ago. So glad we just got approval on it. So but it's also partnering with our teams and making them a part of the process. If you all look at my LinkedIn today, there is I put up a post about a content series that we did called I Heard It on the Internet. I Heard It on the Internet, sorry. And it is in partnership with Darren Wynn, who's a scientist and a TikToker. And the idea for it came from our lawyer. Wow. We were having a meeting going over some stuff, and I was pulling my hair out and this and that, and he's like, hey, what do you think about doing this? I heard it on the internet. I'm like, okay. Every agency has pitched this concept to me. He goes, yeah, but this is different, because it's not just about myth busting. He's from Long Island. I'm trying to do the accent. As somebody who spent summers on Long Island, I'm failing miserably, and I apologize. But it's not just about the myth busting. Sometimes what you heard could be true. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Because yes, you could hear things on the internet and go, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if I can believe it. So we did this concept, but it came from our lawyer. He was the first person who conceptualized it. So he can be a content strategist too. I told him he can put it on his LinkedIn there. But it's partnering with those members of the team. It's also, at the end of a campaign, making sure that they know they were a part of the success. So when it comes to things like articles on diseases and conditions, or profiles that we've done of various people at Pfizer, we go back to them twice a year, depending on their schedule, and say, here's how this all performed. And because of you, we had this number of impressions. We had this number of visits to this site. Overall, I mean, the Axios jump was tremendous. And I'm going to have to read it because I don't remember. But this is something that I sent to our lawyers just this morning. The brand, oh God, I'm old. Brand Keys customer loyalty list came out. And we are number 6 on it. Here's who's in front of us: Apple, Amazon, Domino's, Disney, and TikTok. Here's who's after us: WhatsApp, Netflix, Google, Amazon Video, Nike. One of these things is not like the other, but clearly we're building trust. And my team works with under reputation communication, so our big goal is to bring that trust from our build that trust with our followers and make sure that they are, getting exactly what they need and supporting it. And when that, to bring it back to the big point, we partner with many teams and we do it early in the process. The worst thing to do is to go to a lawyer and say, here it is, it's all done, it's filmed, can't edit it. Well, they want to edit it, they want to see the scripts, they want to do everything, so we partner.
I think the takeaway there is get your legal team on TikTok.
You know what? My lawyer does have a TikTok account, and I'm like, what are you looking at? Law talk? Is it like somebody weighing in on the Britney Spears trial, and like they use the gavel to, swat things away? I have so many thoughts.
That's a future series.
This could be a future conversation. Many, many thoughts.
Well, I'm wondering if there's anything else in the process. It sounds like getting them involved early that. Something else that you might say is a helpful piece in the approval process that you kind of, maybe looking back, you wish you had employed sooner?
I think it's definitely the getting the seat at the table. Because at the very beginning, I was looking to get a quote, and I was going back over these emails because a senior leader had reacted to a tweet that we did in February of 2020 saying, this is fantastic, we need to do more of this. We need to be seen as a company that cares about finding a solution and a trusted and reputable source of information. And when I saw that come through, I was like, we're off to the races. I now can talk about coronavirus. And then I'm looking through the thread because I sent it to the task force, and they're like, I'm not reading it that way. I'm not seeing it. And it's like, no. We need to be a part of we need a seat at the table. We need to be a part of the decision making. I think also sharing the pain. I don't know how many of you manage teams, but as a leader, I try to take the most painful tasks for myself. If it involves getting up at 4 a.m. to prep a press release and the social content that goes with it, or to publish an article at a certain time, I tend to not want to ask my staff to do this because I like them. And there's only 8 of us. I want them to stay or stay with the company, whatever. So I would take on those tasks myself. People came to me and said, you know what, I don't mind doing that. I want to be a part of this. I want to have a role to play. That also worked with content because we now have an editor-in-chief, Robin. Hi, when you're watching this. Hey, Robin. Other Robin, not this Robin. Who has a lot of opinions about content, and she's so great at picking articles and working with the industry dive team to find, Studio ID team, to find really great stories within Pfizer to tell. And she's also somebody who goes out and says, do you have any ideas for me? Who have you spoken to in St. Louis, our Chesterfield facility? Who have you spoken to in Andover? Can you bring those stories to me? So it's making sure that you share the pain, because in the end, it all comes together and people feel a part of the process, even if they have to stay up till 1 for a press release in Europe and then get up at 6 a.m. for the one in the US.
I think it's great. It goes back to the people, not personas, right? Even
exactly.
internal teams. Wonderful. Well, before we wrap, I think the big thing we want to kind of leave the audience with is 3 big pieces of content wisdom for any brand who's looking to build and maintain trust, regulated or not, and doing it, at scale.
One, I think, is to maintain an outsider perspective. And this was a bit of information. This was a statement that was given to me when I was interviewing for a job, not at Pfizer, at a company that I really didn't want to work for. But that was my closing question with everybody I met with. If I was to get this role, what piece of advice would you give me? And this woman said, stay fresh, stay outside. Do not work so hard to meld in with our group think. Make sure you can keep that outside perspective. Now, I'm new to pharma. This is my first job in a regulated industry. It's my first job, dealing with these kind of issues. So every day I have an outsider perspective, and I think that's been the key to understanding our audience, is that I am as much our audience as anybody else. I think the second thing is to find good partners. Certainly, the team at Studio ID has been great about, matching us toe to toe when we're like, okay, here are these crazy ideas. How can we get them together? And we present it as a mess, and you help us work through. And it's like, okay, now this makes sense. I can present it to somebody else. And I think the third thing is not to be afraid to try new and different things. New and different is a very bad word at Pfizer. Like the Pfizer first scares some people. But TikTok, they're going to get used to it. Twitter Spaces, we're going to have great conversation there. Whatever it is, always experiment. Don't feel like you have to, do the tried and true every day.
Fantastic.
Oh.
Well, I think if hopefully we have some time for questions, we can grab that from everyone. And while she's walking up, I'll just remind folks to please stop by our booth to talk about content strategy and share a little bit more about how we've helped Pfizer in the day-to-day, in more details there.
Thank you, and please join me in thanking both Ellen and Robin.
Thank you, Ellen.
Do we have any questions? Yes.
We are in New York State, so the salary transparency is coming. Our jobs in Colorado, I believe, have them. We also, May 2020, signed a pledge with a bunch of other pharmaceutical companies that we would not hide our data, that we would present it to the public, and that's something that our website has done. I think there were 11 other companies, I'm not exactly sure, and have worked very closely with these companies that we partner with, especially BioNTech, to make sure that if a preprint comes out, it's available. It's peer reviewed, et cetera, et cetera. So.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Hi. As a person who has intimate knowledge of MLR reviews, I sympathize with you, first of all. How does that affect your selection of projects to do? Do you think in terms of, well, this will take this long through MLR, so I can't do daily engagement, that's 365 days of content. Right. How does that affect your choices in what you publish?
That is a fabulous question. Sorry?
Can you repeat the question?
Okay, the question is, how does the knowledge that content has to go through an MLR review affect what we choose to do? And with my outsider perspective, so many teams would sit there and be like, ugh, we're never gonna get that through review committee, we're not doing it. I try not to think that way, but I also try to skew my content in such a way of, this is going to be a heavy lift through medical, legal, and regulatory. So I'm going to plan out a timeline. I'm going to make sure that it's something that will not expire in, 2 months. That this is a concept that a year from now will be valid. For something that's a quick win, like, I'm trying to think of a good example. If it's some quick TikTok videos on getting a booster, I will take the language out of there if I think that it has to go through medical and legal review. That if we have to say the booster is for this audience and the recommendation from the CDC is this, and that triggers MLR, I'll pull it out. To the extent that it's still valuable to the audience. I mean, it's a balance that we go through every day, but it does affect it in terms of there's a need for fast content. And if we can't get an article done in 4 months' time, we might not do the article.
Yes.
I've heard that big pharma in general spends about 19 more times on advertising than it does research. Is that true? And how do you respond to that from marketing communications?
I have no idea what goes on the commercial side, and I'm being completely honest there. My team works in corporate affairs and communications, so even though we are content marketing, we are under the reputation umbrella, and our budget is not, not huge at all. And in fact, we usually have to beg and borrow from other teams. I have no idea what it is on the commercial side. I wish I did, but.
Okay, we have about 5 minutes.
So question for you too, though, like when you're talking about being on the reputation side and not having as much of a budget, and as someone who used to work in healthcare too, like how hard it is to get healthcare to take risks. Like, how do you have any tips for how did you do it to like convince those minds to be like, no, we may not have a product for this, but we just need to this. Like,
I'll give you 2 things, and one is our CEO, and it's his attitude of light speed, get it done fast, try new things, fail fast. I mean, every cliche you want to put out there. So when I sit in a meeting and people say, we shouldn't be doing this, we shouldn't be in this space, well, Albert wouldn't agree. I say that like I know him. I've met him. We've been places together. So that's one. But the second is when we do things that are even remotely comparable, we show the metrics. And we show, look, this worked because this. You know, we tried this tweet, and as a result, we got this much engagement. That's a bad example because Twitter is just a hard place for us right now with all the misinformation that's out there. But if we can show, we have a series up right now called Behind the Science. And it's something that, you know, I conceptualized and Robin brought to life. And they're not simple to do. They're very time consuming. And as a result, people are saying, what's the ROI on this? Is this worth doing? So we are doing intercept testing with our audience, and we're able to show, look, 80% of the people who are going to these, give them 5 stars and say that they answered their questions or made them think in a different way. Like, the results are coming out really good. So it's, 1, we have a culture that allows us to do this, but 2, anytime you can go back to the metrics, and even if it's like the connection is here, use the metrics, because data usually tells a story for you.
Excellent.
Sure.
And that was the question of, in healthcare, how to get over that fear of taking big risks. So, anybody else? Okay.
That's where I'll answer the question. Well, there you go. I think the question, yeah, I was going to say, the question, I'm going to try to repeat it, is how do you get over the hump of people looking at, I'm going to rephrase it and tell me if I get it right, but how do you get over the hump of people looking at you and saying, you're big pharma, whatever you say is just going to be serving your own needs? Yes? Okay. That is a risk in everything we do, which is why we try to think like our audience. We try to think, what are they coming here to hear? What do they want to hear? We don't get involved in anything political. We do, on our social media channels, get a little cheeky, as the Brits would say, and kind of poke fun at some misinformation out there, but we don't punch down. That's not our mission. We just want to make people aware that if they're, science positive, we're here with them, and we can give them content that helps them feel positive about the science. It is not something that we will win in a day. It is something that every day we need to think about how to show our audience that we are here for the right reasons. So it starts with the pledge that we put out, and every day we try to be transparent and showing our audience that we care about them. But there are some people that will not believe this, and we know this. So our content is geared for those who want to share it, want to look at an article and get something out of it. But we know there's a percentage of the audience that we're never going to win over. It's the ones that are, as I like to say, vax curious, or, vax, I'm looking into it. Or frankly, it's gone beyond vaccines now to, people saying, I'm not getting chemotherapy because I don't trust in these companies. I'm not getting non-COVID vaccines. I'm barely going to take an aspirin. And working with those audiences to reassure them that, years of testing and, we're here for public health, not, evil. Sorry that was long, but it's... kind of.
Okay, and our time is up. Again, thank you so much, Ellen and Robin. Please remember to fill out your speaker evaluation form.